Hey folks, this is Ray at DCRammaker.com, and today I've got a GoPro Hero 10 Beginner's Guide. This is similar to some of the watch guides I do. It's a full user interface tour, but I'm going to start off with the unboxing, kind of briefly explain the parts in there, and then take you through the entire camera from start to finish, all the features, the app, how to use it, as someone who uses GoPros virtually every single day, often like 2 or 3 GoPros. I've been using the Hero 10 for a while now, so I've got a pretty good feel on how things work and some of the caveats and catches to be aware of. Within YouTube, there's chapters, so you'll see this along the bottom there of the video. Allows you to kind of skip around and find the section you're most interested in. So with that, let's dive into it. This is the GoPro Hero 10 case. This is the box that it comes in. It's actually both a case and a box itself. And GoPro makes a big point of being it's fully recyclable. So take this little paper thing off there. And then right here we have, got to go the right direction, the zippered pouch with the GoPro inside of it. You can see this is one of the bundle editions. In this case, this is the one with the 3-way stick. If you don't have the 3-way stick, then you simply don't get the 3-way as well as the extra battery. And I'll explain all that in just a second. So let's talk about some of the camera parts. This is, of course, the camera itself, if we can get it out of there. There we go. And then we have here the different mounts, and then a sticky mount and a curved sticky mount. The 3-way stick, we're going to set this aside for right now, though. And then the charging cable, as well as a thumb screw, and then the batteries, and finally an SD card. That's up here on this piece of paper right there. Now, to kind of show you what's in a base GoPro package, we just simply take the SD card out of the way, we take the extra battery out of the way, and this is what you're left with. These components right here. So again, talking through these, this is the GoPro Hero 10 battery. It's the same as the Hero 9 battery, but is different from the Hero 6, 7, 5. Every other battery out there is different except for the 9 and 10. They're the same. This here is a flat sticky mount. It's designed to be stuck to mount surfaces like this using a sticky on bottom, and it's actually pretty darn durable. Like I put this on cars, no problem at pretty darn high speeds, versus the curved sticky mount, exact same concept, but with a curved material. So like on the front of a car hood, sometimes this is a little bit better for that particular scenario. And then these are the mounts that go inside of them. So this goes in like this, snaps in place. You put this in the rubber stopper in there to keep it nice and secure. And then you take the GoPro screw through that with the camera. So here is the camera. We'll get the plastic off that, the paper off of that. So there's the plastic off the screen. Don't forget to do all these. You don't want that plastic on that front screen right there. And then on this side here, we have a door. So you can see if we put our thumb in there, or our fingernails in there. This is the inside of the GoPro. This door is actually removable, so you can pop it off like this pretty easily. And then that allows you to put different accessory doors on that we'll talk about a little later in the video. So you'll see right there, that is the SD card slot. Now in my case, I tend to use this SD card here. This is not sponsored, this is just what I buy. I buy like these in piles of them. I prefer larger SD cards, like 256 gig SD cards. Some people prefer using smaller SD cards in case you lose one, you don't lose everything. But for me, almost all my footage is backed up anyways to the GoPro Cloud, we'll talk about later. So I'm going with 256 ones. Now to save you the hassle, or save me the hassle of trying to open this on a camera, I've already opened one ahead of time. So it's right there, you see that card, and we simply slide it in. And then we take the battery and pop it in as well. And then the door, in my case, I removed it. Normally you just leave it like swinging like this, but we'll go ahead and close that up. And then we can power it on with this mode button right here. This little flap is not a door. Don't try to remove that. That's actually covering one of the microphones. There's a microphone in there. There's a microphone on the front. And then there is a microphone on the top. So these 3 microphones basically allow you to get spatial audio, allows you to figure out what the best possible microphone is for that particular scenario, whether you're facing forward or facing back. Now to power it on, we'll hold this mode button on for just a second. There we go. And that simply powers it on for the first time. Now this is a good time to mention on the bottom here, these are the wings that pop out for the mount. So you can see this will then slide into it just like this. And then you put the screw in it this way. As a general rule, the screw should go in the opposite side of the battery door. Because if you go in this way, then it's hard to open up the battery door. So if you go this way, then it'll go ahead and be nice and snug there. You can use a screwdriver if you really need to crank this down. Sometimes if I'm doing something that might have a lot of force, I will crank that down, like mountain biking on the back of a mountain bike or something like that. Otherwise though, just using your finger is more than sufficient to get it nice and snug. So now we'll go ahead and we'll agree to the terms of service. I'm going to turn on GPS location tagging, so that way I get that within the photos. And now we need to open up our GoPro Quik app on the phone. Oh, just a quick note from future me in this video. Much later on in the video, I talk about all the accessories I use. If you're finding this video interesting or useful, whack that like button at the bottom there. It really does help out this video and the channel quite a bit. I know it's a super long video, but that kind of thing really does make it more visible within YouTube. So the GoPro Quik app is a free app. There's portions around the GoPro Quik app that can be paid as part of the GoPro subscription. But again, for the core purpose of what we're talking about today, we're just going to use the free portions. So I'm going to go to the upper corner right there and tap that camera icon, and I'm going to choose to add a new camera. Now in my case, I've got a bunch of cameras, but it'll just automatically ask you if you want to pair a new camera, and there we can see right there, we found our GoPro. Great. I click pair. And then I'm going to go ahead and say, do you want to approve the pairing request? Yep, I do. And you'll see over here, this chirps. And it's going to ask you if you want to update the date and time using the app or set it manually. I will go ahead and use the GoPro app. You can give it a name, tap done, and this will save the name. Now it wants to install an update. You'll definitely want to do this the first time. That'll go ahead and ensure that it's up to date. And every GoPro camera coming out of the box will pretty much require an update, especially if you're buying it here just after launch. So now it's allowing me to join the Wi-Fi network. So my phone wants to connect to this via Wi-Fi. So when your phone talks to the camera, it initially does so via Bluetooth, and that in turn tells it to wake up the Wi-Fi side of it, because the Wi-Fi takes more power, more battery. So it only uses Wi-Fi when it needs to transfer big files or to preview the video stream. Now, one caveat right now is my battery is actually not charged enough to complete this operation. So I'm going to simply swap batteries to a spare battery I've already pre-charged. You'll probably want to go ahead and charge up your GoPro before you get too far into this process, especially the update, because the update does require a certain battery level. Okay, and you can see now it's going ahead and transferring the update to my camera. This doesn't take too long. I'll let it speed through this really quickly. So while that's going on, now's a good time to talk about waterproofing. So this entire camera, once you close this door, is waterproof to 33 feet or about 10 meters. And this is true, again, as long as the front door is closed and as long as this lens is locked on there. The lens is actually removable. So the way you can remove the lens is by just twisting it like this, and that pops it out, and you'll find just the right point where it pops off. Maybe more gracefully than that, but that works. And then you can see there's a little kind of a spring system in there, so you can put it back in place and you'll feel the lock, and now it's nice and snug again. I would not recommend removing this lens unless there's a good reason to. The reason is that when you remove it, you're allowing humidity to get in there, which could cause fogging down the road. So I would prefer just to keep that on there at all cases. If you do have to remove it, do it indoors where it's dry, where the temperature hasn't changed very much, and let kind of things settle out before heading outside. Now the Hero 10 contains a new hydrophobic lens, which means that there's a coating on there that will repel water. In the past with the Hero 9, the water would stick to the surface, versus now it basically just drops right off. So you don't want to lick this. In fact, GoPro's made a point of saying, please do not lick the Hero 10 lens because it'll actually remove the coating. Versus with the Hero 9 and prior, if you gave it a lick when you're in the water, it'll go ahead and keep the water droplets from forming on the lens itself. While we're waiting for the update to confirm right there, to charge the camera, you will take this USB-C charger. This side is USB, this side is regular USB. You can use pretty much any USB cord, including one that you may have for your laptop, for example. You open up the door, again, using your nails. It's like the worst part of a GoPro though. And then you plug it in right there, and you plug this other side in to a power outlet. You can also buy battery pack chargers. For example, this one right here is from GoPro, but there's tons of third-party ones out there. Allows you to put the batteries right in there. This is handy if you're going on a trip. I'll usually take something like this with me so I can charge multiple batteries quickly at night, as opposed to having to plug the camera in and do the charging that way. Okay, now that we've got the camera all ready to go, let's walk through the user interface and kind of explain how everything actually works. So along the top up here, this is your main status. So if the screen goes off like that, you just simply tap it. That means you've waited too long. It's trying to save some battery life. So you see 7 hours and 48 minutes. That is the recording time of the SD card. Over here, this is the battery, 92%. In the middle, this is showing you the mode, right now in video mode. And then these 4 buttons are customizable. So you can go and change those. I can change this one right down at the bottom here, that zoom one, by just holding it for a second. Now sometimes you might miss, but if you hit it right on, there we go, and I can change it to a different button. This is actually changed from the Hero 9, by the way. This used to be like a horrifically bad menu. Now you can actually more easily see what you're choosing from, even if sometimes you mistap. So I can just scroll through these and change some of the quick action or quick access menu options. So for example, just leave the timer one right there for right now. Now I can either tap over here to get back, or I can always press the mode button on this side over here. Up here, this icon means your hypersmooth icon. So this allows me to change the smoothing levels. Right now it's standard up to boost if I go swipe to the top, or the bottom. Hypersmooth is all about stabilization. So if you turn it off, you'll have no stabilization and your images in general look pretty rough. So I would never recommend turning it off. I usually keep it either on or on boost. Boost is the highest level. Some people prefer a little bit less stabilization, so you have a little more of the feeling of the particular activity, for example, mountain biking. But even then, I still prefer boost most of the time. Back into the main menu though, you see this bottom option. This is essentially showing you what resolution. So it's saying I'm at 5.3K resolution, it's 60 frames per second in linear mode. So if I tap on this, you'll see there's a couple of custom resolutions or default resolutions. Each of these can be customized though, and you can add additional ones at the bottom. These are like quick access resolutions, so you can basically access these whenever you want, customize them. I usually tweak some so that I have a couple that are high res, like this 5K 61 in linear, some that are super view, like this 4K 31 that are for really wide views, and then the bottom, some other linear ones I'll customize. So we'll just customize this top one up here, and we just do that hitting a little pencil over there. And this allows us to change the resolution starting there. So you can see the resolution is displayed on this portion up here. So we'll go with 5.3K and then we'll change it to 30 frames per second. And you can also go into a 4:3 aspect ratio. And that's a little more advanced than this, but I would say in general, keep it at 16:9, which is this row right here, because that's gonna match your TVs. 4:3 is if you're doing a bit more post-production later on and you want the vertical space, but we won't worry about that for now. If I wanted to change it to 4K, I would tap this. And you can see now the 120 becomes illuminated because that's allowed in 4K. And if I go to 2.7K, we get all the way up to 240 frames per second. And if I go to 1080p, we're still at 240 frames per second. GoPro says they're not quite ready to do 480 on this particular firmware camera, maybe down the road, but not right now. So I'm gonna go back to 4K and we're gonna put this to 120 frames per second and leave that as is. And then you have the lens. The lens basically controls the field of view axis. And so it's best to show this in a different spot. I'm gonna go back here to the menus and you'll see the W right there. That means it's in the wide lens right now. So I'm gonna tilt this up a little bit so you can see. Hopefully that still works. And I'm gonna change the different lenses. So here is super view. You can see it's a much wider picture. It's capturing more of the sides of this window over here. And then if I go to wide, you'll see it crops out a portion of that window. And if I go to linear, crops out even more. And then into linear plus horizon leveling, we'll talk about horizon leveling in just a second. And then into narrow, which gets even more zoomed in. Now this is all digital zoom. It's not actually changing anything mechanically. It's just cropping in within the image. So my personal preference depends on what I'm doing. If I'm doing it mountain biking and I'm putting this on a chest mount, then I'm gonna use super view. If I'm skiing and I have it on a pole, I'm gonna use super view. So I get my skis in the frame and everything. But for day-to-day stuff, I'm probably gonna just choose wide. Versus if I want something that does not have a fisheye look at all, then I use linear. Linear is what GoPro calls a non-fisheye look, meaning it's completely like a normal recorded screen, something that you might see record on a phone, for example, or on a proper video camera where there's no fisheye look. That's called linear. And this last option here is linear plus horizon leveling. And what that means is that as I rotate the camera, so watch this, the camera will pretend like it's not rotating at all until I get to just the right amount, and then it'll go click, and you'll see it'll finally, there we go. And that means I've gone beyond the threshold of typically 45 degrees. And once I hit that point, then it can no longer compensate for that roll within the camera itself. So I go back this way. You can see at this point, the camera is compensating for the roll, and then right there, if I hit that point right there, then it flips over and it can no longer compensate. And if I were to turn this camera over, it would record the entire thing. Now in non-recording mode, it's actually gonna change into portrait mode. So you just saw that happen. The icons went down to the bottom. That means it's now in portrait orientation. This is handy if you're gonna shoot something exclusively for Instagram where you want that portrait orientation, then I would record here, press the record button, and it'll stay in that mode even if you turn it back this way. So going back to here, we'll go back and just adjust this a little bit. So you can see we've got the horizon leveling on. We're gonna go turn that off for the moment and go back to linear though. There we go. And you can see right here, the 2x, that means it is in 2 times slow motion. So you see the 60, that's the frames per second. In this case, that means that it's twice the normal speed. So typically speaking, a broadcast TV would be about 30 frames per second. And yes, there are differences depending on whether you're talking NTSC or PAL, but that's all way too complex for today's discussion. Just focus on the fact that the more frames per second means the more you can slow it down. Is a really simple example of this. I'm gonna show you this video right now. And what you're seeing is footage I shot with the Hero 10 10 in 120 frames per second, while the drone that it was on top of was at 60 frames per second. That means that as I slow this footage down 4 times, from 120 frames per second to 30 frames per second, that Hero 10 footage looks buttery smooth. However, the camera in the drone was only at 60 frames per second, so it looks a little more choppy. So what this allows you to do, the higher the frame rates you get, the more you can slow it down. So again, to recap, is a very simple kind of guide in life. I would keep it at 4K 30, give or take what you want to do, or 5K 30 if you're trying to get a little more resolution out of it. And then finally, I would just ensure that boost mode is enabled. The quick way of looking at that is if this is not blue, boost is not enabled. So I tap this right there, swipe it up to boost, and then tap back, and you'll see now it's blue, meaning that boost is enabled on the camera. So before we dive into the menu bit, let's long hold this option right now. And this will get me back into the cinematic settings, this particular profile. And you can see there's a couple other options here. So we talked about the resolution of frame rates, we talked about the lens, we talked about hypersmooth. There's scheduled capture. This allows me to start a capture at a different time. So for example, 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, I can say, hey, I want to set a capture starting at 6:06 a.m. This will automatically turn on the camera. So you can actually leave the camera outside, hopefully somewhere safe, and it'll turn the camera on, assuming there's battery in it, at 6:06 a.m. and start recording. This is useful if you wanted to capture a sunset, for example, it'll do that. And then you can say, you know what, I want to turn it off after a given time frame, let's say 30 minutes. That's all I really need for that particular shot, and that's it. Now, of course, you can go ahead and open up this compartment and attach the USB cable that came with it, and that to a battery pack, and you can charge this forever and give it basically forever power until your SD card runs out. So I'm going to turn this back off because I don't really want to have it turning on at 6 in the morning tomorrow morning. There we go. Bring it back there. If we scroll on down here, there's the timer option. So you can basically delay how long until the shot starts, so 3 seconds or 10 seconds. Again, helpful if you want to capture certain things, though realistically, in this day and age, you just simply run it the entire time. So don't worry about that. Down here, we have ProTune. This is where the advanced options are for changing some of the image quality settings. So you can see, for example, you can turn the bitrate up to high, which gives it to 100 megabits per second. So that's if you're going to be using this in post-production. If you're not doing post-production, don't worry about that at all. You can change the shutter speed right here. Again, I would generally leave these alone. The only thing I do occasionally change is EV comp. So if I'm shooting somewhere where it's darker and I know it's darker, for example, in the forest, I might bump this up half a stop or so. Oops, that's too much. It's a little bit sensitive. So you can see how that changes the brightness level there. Come on, there we go, right in the middle. And you can see now it's a little bit better. I can go down, here's the ISO, sharpness, color. You can make it more vibrant if you want to, or you can go flat if you're going to do it again post-production. Otherwise, I would just leave kind of the defaults for a lot of this stuff. And you can also reset this at any time by just going back up here, tapping this, and this will reset that particular ProTune settings back to the defaults if you aren't sure what you've set it to and you want to get it back to where you want. And then for this particular profile, the cinematic profile, you can see those are the 4 icons in the front there that we talked about, the 4 buttons. I can change each of those ones individually for this profile. And this then allows me to do basically my own profile. So I could tap into this once, go down to the bottom, click the plus, and now I can make a new profile. So your option is you want a standard video profile or do you want a looping one? A looping one means it's going to go ahead and get rid of the oldest footage to make room for the newest footage in case you run out of space. I'm going to go with the standard one. There we go. And you can choose your settings just like before. No real differences right here. This is all the same settings, just making a new profile. And then I can say this is something different. So I'm going to make this an air profile. Now let's say this was like an FPV drone one. Then I would say, okay, video good, oops, video. And I'm going to go to, in this case, 4:3 up here. And I'm going to do 4:3 60, perfect. I'm going to do wide. I'm going to turn off my hypersmooth because this is for drones. I'm going to stabilize it later on. I'll keep all this stuff. Let's see, bitrate high, definitely, because I'm going to do lots of post-production in this. Then click OK. Now I've got the air icon there. And now you'll see a new profile if I click right there. And you can create new profiles for anything. And so I wouldn't use those settings for a non-drone configuration, but that's just kind of showing an example on some of the power of this. And you can create your own profiles as you see fit. You can't quite name them and have as many custom icons as I wish you could, but it's fine for what I particularly use it for. HindSight allows you to record things in the past, so kind of like a DVR, without necessarily spending the recording space. So you're consuming the battery to do this, but you're not consuming your storage space. So this is really handy when you are potentially capturing someone doing a bunch of jumps and you don't know which jump they're actually going to get it right. Or think about someone trying to make a shot in a basketball hoop from all the way across the court. It may take them a bunch of attempts and you don't want to sit there like recording all of them. So instead what you do is you enable HindSight. You tap this right there. You go into the settings for this particular mode and you see HindSight there. And this allows you to enable a 15-second or a 30-second HindSight. So in 30-second mode, what happens here is you'll see right now starting to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 30 seconds. That's establishing the buffer. Right now it's making that buffer of 7 seconds. So if I were to press the record button right now, it'll have the last 10 seconds, 11 seconds, 12 seconds of buffer, and that'll start the video from 12 seconds ago. So this is great, again, for like trying to capture that shot where you don't want to like sit there having all this extra junk on your SD card you got to clear out later on to just do this. Now, once we hit 30 seconds, it will turn blue, indicating our buffer is completely filled, not in a bad way, but like it's to the fullest extent possible. And if I hit record, you'll see it'll start from 30 seconds because it's got that 30-second buffer. And then I hit stop again. And now this clip is saved and it recreates a new buffer from 1 second. I can click stop HindSight because again, this is burning through battery at the same rate as recording. So you only really want to use this when you know you need it for something. And then if I go back here into the videos, you can see my video. This one has 36 seconds. That's establishing the buffer. And you can hear right now me talking about establishing the buffer. So if I were to press the record button right now, it'll have the last 10 seconds, 11 seconds, 12 seconds of buffer. Again, a pretty cool little feature to use in the right scenario. Just don't use it every single day. So next we've got Timewarp. So we'll go into the mode right there, and you see photo, and then time-lapse, which is where Timewarp is. Now, time-lapse is typically just a set of static images all strung together, versus Timewarp will stabilize those images. And that's a really big deal because this means that it looks silky smooth. So when you see a really well done time-lapse, it is actually Timewarp in most cases. When you see a really bad time-lapse, it's probably just the normal time-lapse option. And you can see these here. I tap it, Timewarp or time-lapse. So in time-lapse, it's going to go ahead and take a shot every half a second, versus Timewarp, it's going to modify that based on the speed and movement around it, and you use accelerometer data from the camera itself. Also, definitely change yourself over to like 4K or something like that. Friends don't let friends shoot time lapses in a 1080p. That's just a waste of good time. And you can change the digital lens there if you want to. There you go. And then your speed here, you can choose the different playback speed. So you can see if I go to the very top here, that it's 30x speed, 30x speed. A 5-minute recording creates about 10 seconds of video. So if you had an Instagram video you wanted, that you wanted to be a certain duration, let's just say right there, a 20-second, probably 30 seconds better for Instagram, so 2 Instagram stories, then this would take 5 minutes of recording time down to 30 seconds. As a general rule of thumb though, Timewarp is good for moving places, going places like putting on a car or on a bike, and showing movement through a space, versus time-lapse is much better when you're static. When you're showing, for example, a sunset, you would do time-lapse. So you go back here, choose time-lapse instead. The same options if you wanted to change resolution, of course, up there. And you can change the interval capture right there by just sliding up and down this lever through there. So again, that's interval 60 minutes, by the way. So that'd be a really long time. That'd be once an hour you take a photo. But you could plug this in and capture days and days and days of time if you wanted to. And you could also like turn on schedule capture. So you could put this out in the morning to capture sunrise as a time lapse if you wanted to do that. But again, the simple rule of thumb is Timewarp when you're going somewhere and going like moving through a space, and time-lapse when you're staying static. So we've looked through some of the video settings. Now what I want to note is that you can change to photo by just tapping the mode button right there. So if you tap the mode button once, it goes into photo mode. And now we have essentially the same things in photo mode. Okay, so if we tap on the photo icon there, you'll see there are different photo modes. The first one is just taking a single photo. We'll talk about that in just a second. There's live burst. What this allows you to do is basically take like a live photo on iOS or a motion still on Android. So when I take this picture, if I go like this real quick, you'll see that's actually a photo, and I can go into that and choose a given frame from that on the bottom here. So I can say, you know what, I want this to be the frame, but I can actually swipe through here and you can see my hand go up and down. So it's basically a 3-second photo, essentially, 90 different frames that you see at the top right there. So go back out of that. If I go back to the menu at the bottom, I can do burst, which will take a given number of photos depending on what the settings are. And then below that, there's night photo. So let's kind of start at the top here and look at some of the settings. So in this mode, I can choose a lens. So just like before, we have the wide lens, linear lens, or narrow lens. I typically use linear or wide depending on what I want out of the photo. And then here, the output. So super photo is basically going to give you the best shot in terms of color, vibrancy. It's the one that you're probably thinking of when you think of a GoPro photo being like really bam in terms of saturation, everything like that. That's what I'm probably going to use most of the time because I think it looks the best. HDR is if you want an HDR one, usually a little bit less, more bam than the super photo. And then there's, middle there. There's just a standard output, JPEG, and at the bottom here is both JPEG and RAW. So if you want a RAW photo, you'll get both JPEG and the GPR file, which is the RAW file that you can edit after the fact. For most people, if you're a beginner, I would just keep it on super photo. That's where you're gonna get the best results. Like before, there's schedule capture, there's timer, and there's zoom here. If you want to zoom in and out, again, this is just cropping it though digitally. So I would save your cropping for your phone or something like that later on to do that as opposed to doing it on the camera. That way you can adjust it as you see fit based on what you need. Like before, there's ProTune settings down here. You can change the white balance, the sharpness if you want to, the color, and there's also the same shortcuts we had before, just like on the video mode, to be able to change the quick access buttons. If we go back on the photo modes, go down to burst here. We'll change that. So you can see here the burst rate, you can choose the rate. In this case, it's 25 photos in 1 second. You can go up to the right top there, 30 photos in 10 seconds. And so these are different rates. You'll see the rates are changing over there as well. And this allows you to change based on what you want. Now the thing is, in talking to GoPro, in a lot of ways, burst photos will mostly go away. It's much easier to instead use the GoPro app after the fact and shoot a video and then take the photo you want. Given that you have frame rates now far faster than this in video mode and up to 19.6 megapixels to pull from those frames versus a direct photo here is 23.6, so not a huge difference. It's much easier to just shoot something at a very high frame rate, like 240 frames per second, and then grab the exact still that you want as opposed to hoping you press the button correctly on the photo. At the bottom here is night photo mode. This is the one exception to that where photos make more sense because in this case you're going ahead and probably going to be tweaking some of these settings down here for how long it's going to stay exposed. And you can get some really good GoPro night shots, but only if you're not moving. As a general rule of thumb, the GoPro kind of sucks at night and it's going to suck when it's moving. But if it's still, it's pretty good for photos and it's maybe salvageable in some cases for video, but mostly just photos. Oh, and then there is a timer here. So you can put the timer on if you want. Again, there's that 3-second timer, 10-second timer, or you can turn it off. That's there in case you wanted to get a group photo or something like that. You can do that. Though you could also use the GoPro commands. That's probably a good time to do that. So if I swipe down here from the top, you'll see this little icon with the person talking to an X. That is the GoPro voiceover commands. So I can tap this there and you see voice controls on. And I can swipe up now. Okay, GoPro, take a photo. And it's going to start that 3-second countdown because that's what the settings are. And this works also in video mode as well. So I can go tap into video mode here. And then I can say, okay, GoPro, start recording. And I don't think you actually need to say okay. I'm just kind of like, it's part of my habit. GoPro, stop recording. Now, I don't typically use the voiceover commands for 2 reasons. One, I don't really like shouting at my GoPro, but 2, I've had numerous cases where it'll pick something else up and then stop my recording. So I usually leave it disabled. But this is a good time to talk about some of these other settings right here. This top one turns on and off the beeps. So you can turn off the beeps if you don't want them there. This is useful if you're trying to shoot indoors or maybe you're using like an airplane or something like that where you're trying to shoot out the window, but you don't really want the beeps all the time because they're kind of loud. Over here, there we go. This is quick capture. So this is controlling what happens when you just press this button. So if the camera is off, what will it do when you press this one button? And this will basically start recording as soon as you press that shutter button. So we can tap that off or on if we want to. And then we have a screen lock. So this will automatically lock the screen after a couple seconds. This is handy in some cases if you're around the water a lot, but otherwise I find it kind of a nuisance. So I turn this on like if I'm near the beach, but otherwise I leave it off. Over here, we'll put a grid on. So you can see the grid lines right now. And then this is the front screen. So this controls the front screen options. So right now, we have it showing everything. So if I tilt this back up and just click back once, you can see there's black bars on the bottom. It shows me the status that it's in right now. And you can see there's lots of space on my side over here and over there as well. But if I change that setting, we'll go in here, back and tap into this, and we'll do the center weighted, which is the default. If I swipe back here and turn around again, you'll see now it's center weighted on me. Now it's still recording the exact same thing as before, except you're seeing the preview here much smaller. I prefer the other way because I want to see everything that's in the frame, but I know some people that prefer this because they want to see what's kind of centered in the frame itself. You can also turn this off entirely if you want to. So you can go here and you can choose to turn off the screen, or you can turn off the video portion and just put the status display instead there. So you can see the number of photos I've taken. By the way, I swapped cameras midway through because I'm going to show you some other stuff on this camera, and it's a little bit easier to do with a bunch of video on there. Okay, so back over here, get this all centered up, good to go. Swap down, go to the right, and then this is the menu. So this is connections. This is where I can turn and off wireless connections. I can connect to a device. This could be to the GoPro app if I had to repair it to a different phone. Also the remote as well. So if I have the GoPro remote, which is right here, this little remote, I can control it from this. And so I can power this on. And I think this one isn't paired to my particular GoPro, but this would allow me to pair it. I would tap on pair new, pair remote, like this. And these two might start talking together, just like that. It's really that simple. And now this will allow me to record not only this, or control not only this particular unit, but up to 5 other GoPros. So you can see I just press the button, and now it immediately starts recording, and I can press it again, stop recording. I can change modes on the side right here. Now the remote, of course, is extra, but if you buy like the GoPro subscription thing, then you get a discount on it, I believe. So that's something to consider if you're looking at picking up the remote. I use a remote when I'm mountain biking. I just have it on my handlebars. Here's a little bit of an image of that. You can see it right there. It just makes it easier to control and get shots without having to necessarily touch my GoPro. The last thing to show you is a neat little trick if you're in the water, underwater, and you want to go ahead and change the mode. So basically change which one of these modes are there. So first, let's get ourselves in a video, right, like this. And now you want to go ahead and change this mode, but you can't use a touchscreen because it's underwater. What you do is you hold the mode button and this down at the same time, and this allows a new front menu that you can access in the water. So you just press the mode button now to iterate through these, and this allows you to access those custom menu options you've already pre-created, and then just tap the top button to select it, like this. And then you can start recording like normal. Again, because when in the water, the screen doesn't really work. No, it doesn't work at all. So you want that kind of quick access option to be able to change the modes to a different frame rate or different resolution. Okay, at this point we've covered everything on the camera itself, so let's talk about the app for a little bit. So this is the GoPro Quik app we saw earlier when we updated things. To access my camera, I'm just going to tap this button up there. I'm going to find the correct camera. This is the one with all my footage on it, so I'm going to use this one instead because I think it's a little more interesting for you to see. Okay, by tapping View Media, it'll lower that media up. Put this on the screen there, screen recording, so you can see what's going on. And you can see here are all my clips. Now I can filter these at the top by tapping to photos or videos or just the highlighted ones if I just wanted those. I can also sort them by file size up here as well, or capture date. That way if you're trying to like save some space, you might want to get rid of some bigger files, you can do that. And you can see each one of these will show me the time and whether it's a photo or a video. So we'll choose this hang gliding one right there, not hang gliding, paragliding right there. And I can tap to play it if I want to. So just like that. You can hear my voice in the background kind of right there. I can scrub along the bottom to change a different part of the video. So basically fast forwarding, moving through that if I wanted to. And then at the very bottom, there's a bunch of options. This one here will download the entire clip to my phone. So you can see it's starting to do that right now. It doesn't take too long on Wi-Fi. You can use the wired connection as well. That's a little bit faster. In that case, you would need to use a dongle, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. There we go. Now it's complete on the phone. Close that out. I can also then trim a portion of it. So this is, again, working off of the one on the camera. So I can say, you know what, I just want this little last section right there. I tap the scissors, I slide forward, I tap again, and it's now just going to take that 6-second portion, and it's going to create a new clip at the top, and I can save it to the app. It's just a 6-second portion. As opposed to the entire thing. That's useful if you shoot a really long video and you're like, oh, I don't want to download this massive 15-minute thing. You can just grab what you need right there as opposed to the entire bit. I do that quite often. I'm trying to grab something for Instagram, or I just want 10 or 15 seconds. I don't want the entire downhill mountain bike run on there. The next one is my favorite right there, which allows me to grab a photo from that. So now once I tap that, I can grab this photo right, let's see, going along the trees. Let's find it when I'm a little too far, so I'm gonna go back a little bit right there. That'll work great. And then I click Save Frame. And this is gonna download up to a 19.6 megapixel frame, depending on which resolution it's shot in. And now that is saved to my media folder. Now this is where things are a little bit confusing though, because if you go back here, go back again, you'll see this icon right there. That is your media folder in GoPro app. So you can see in a second, it'll refresh, and I think those are back on the day that those were saved on. So those are back a couple weeks ago here. So let me find just that one that we just saved right there. There's that one there, and there's that 6-second clip that we made. So you can see this right there. If I want to save it to the phone, I would tap this up here in the corner. And now this will save it to photos on my phone itself, or you can share it off to other platforms, Instagram, Facebook, etc. down here. Finally, when it comes to controlling the GoPro from your phone, again, tap the icon up right hand corner for your GoPro, click control your GoPro, and now it'll start a preview and it'll connect to Wi-Fi, and you can see it's basically live off of that. Now the one downside is once I start recording, I'm going to change the mode at the bottom here. So I can change the mode, and I go into just do a standard, there we go, 5.3K, 60 frames per second. The second I hit record, it does make the preview disappear over here. It's still recording, you can see it's over there, and I can still tap a highlight tag. I say, yep, this is an important moment. You can see the highlight tag was added, but you can't see anymore. Understanding is this is based on a lawsuit that GoPro is facing right now from, I think, Contour. It's been like this since the Hero 9. They used to have it in the past, but not anymore. So hopefully that gets resolved at some point. Then click on tap, and this will stop recording, and you can see now I get the preview back again. I can also change other more advanced settings by clicking the little wrench in the corner there. You can see essentially all the same options we had from the camera itself over here. A useful one in here though is to be able to sync the date and time. So you see set date and time, especially if you were to go somewhere, you might want to do that really quickly, so change time zones. Otherwise, it's all pretty much the same stuff. There is locate camera though. So this is useful if you're within range of the camera, then you can tap this locate camera button and it'll start beeping in just a second. So I just used this the other day to locate a downed drone, actually, that I put the GoPro on top of. Super, super useful because the drone's own internal location thing did not work. This one did. It was awesome. I was really happy with that. I've also got an entire video up in the corner there on doing this, other ways to do it in case this feature doesn't work. So there's other tricks to making that work. So with that, we've talked camera stuff. Let's talk accessories, because there are tons of GoPro accessories, and arguably that's the best part of the ecosystem, is that it is an ecosystem, and even other camera companies now use the same mounts. The key thing in terms of mount is that it has this bottom mount that you see right there, which is on every single GoPro since the beginning of time. So you don't have to worry about it too much. It's out there for everything. So let me just walk you through my favorite ones. Again, these are nothing here is sponsored. I'm just showing you what I love, what I buy all the time. And I've got boxes and boxes and boxes of GoPro mounts. So I'm going to tell you what things have worked well and what things don't work well. So number one here, we'll just go get this out of the way, is the GoPro 3-way stick. It is awesome. Absolutely awesome. They just revamped it. I've got to do a review on the new one, but it's pretty cool. It allows you to go ahead and expand it out like this. You put the GoPro on the top up there. It's got a little ball head that allows you to move it around too. So the GoPro goes on top. And then on the bottom is a little tripod leg base. Come on. Here we go. Pop open. There we go. And you can then use this anywhere you want to, basically to kind of like a part tripod, part selfie stick. You hold it out like this. I love it. I use this. Super, super versatile. Has a little grip on there in case you want to do something kind of dangerous with it. It's all there. So that is highly recommended. Kind of pricey, but like one of the top 3 things. If I had to pick 3 things, that is one of them. Number 1 though is easily the GoPro Shorty Stick. Without question, my favorite thing out there. So it's basically a mini version of that, but it doesn't do all the bendy stuff. So it's a little tripod like this. This goes up like that, and you put the GoPro straight on the top like this, lock it in place, and it's great. Like if I'm shooting stuff like this, I can hold it out there, I can collapse it in. I put this all the time in my pocket when I'm running. Hands down my favorite thing out there. I would definitely recommend this. So moving along here, talked about the GoPro remote earlier. Take it or leave it. If you're like mountain biking and doing something where you can't access your GoPro all the time and can't use a phone, then yes. Otherwise, I would skip it, to be honest. So we don't need the box. GoPro Media Mod. So this is something that, again, a bit more advanced. This allows you to plug in microphones in the back. In fact, I would normally plug in this microphone setup right here into this when I'm out doing things like the Tour de France or something like that and interviewing teams. I'm going to probably use a GoPro, a little more versatile for that. So this has a shotgun mic on the front. It pretty much sucks, but instead it has the 3.5 millimeter port on the back. There we go. That's all important. Also has HDMI out. It's not too great either, but that port's what you're paying for. Oh, and I probably should say, like, a general rule of thumb I have for whether to buy GoPro accessories or third-party accessories comes down to how much you value your GoPro in that moment. And that may sound silly, but hear me out. So For things where I'm attaching it to a car, then I'm going to buy a GoPro branded accessory because I trust that brand. I've had a lot of bad suction cup mounts from third-party companies that suck. I've also had some very, very good expensive ones, really expensive ones. But like the cheap ones you see for suction cup mount, that's not the time and place where you want to trust a crappy $7 suction cup mount. However, there are other times where that's totally fine. For example, like buying extra screws and that kind of stuff, go for it. I'll talk about one of those packs in just a second, but for load-bearing stuff, where it's like make or break, do or die for your GoPro, I would go with the branded stuff or a known trusted brand, like a hard metal mount, something like that, as opposed to like the $2 option on Amazon. But for other things, we'll get there. So I use these clamps all the time. You can attach a GoPro like this to it and then put the GoPro on top all the time. Almost every single day I attach them to bikes. In general, the GoPro ones are a little bit beefier than the knockoff ones. Doesn't really make too much of a difference in day-to-day usage. Again, if you're doing something crazy high loads, but I use both knockoff ones and GoPro ones interchangeably and it doesn't really matter. There's GoPro's basically like waterproof selfie sticks. So this one will float in the water. Honestly, it's kind of too big for me. Instead, what I use almost every day I go swimming is this cheap one, just like this from Amazon. Amazon Basics one looks almost identical to this. It costs like $4, $5, I don't know, something like that. This is what I use. It's just a little bit smaller, and I don't really need this gigantic thing, especially if I'm trying to like put it in my swimsuit. It looks a little sketchy. So I use this little one, and I don't even use this all the time. Only when I'm going in water is where if I drop it, I'm not going to get it back. Versus if I can see the bottom and can get it to it pretty easily, then I'll just go without it and just simply hand hold it. So this is a good example of a like accessory pack that you can buy on Amazon. There's a boatload of them. I'll link a couple down below. Link all this stuff down below. This whole pack costs like 15 bucks, and it's just a bunch of accessories. So you've got in here, for example, a head mount. If you want to, put this on your head and put a GoPro on it, you might use that. Like I use this once a year, so that's fine. I don't really need to buy an expensive one from GoPro on that. Though, floating selfie stick we talked about, sure. This is a crappy suction cup mount. That's fine if you're just doing something inside of a car, like in the front dash window. No problem. You can use this. It works great. A generally crappy clamp mount. That's really, again, minor things. It works great for. If you were going to put it outside of a car at full speed, not so much, but it's good. It came with a crappy tripod that you're not going to use, but it's there. A wrist strap. Again, this is fine. It's not a super nice one, but that's what it's like saying, I'll use some of this stuff once every few months, but in total for 15 or 20 bucks, I'll use the totality of it throughout the year quite frequently. Usually a lot of them include like boatloads of these little GoPro adapters. You're going to want to go through these. You want to have lots of those and lots of screws handy. And most of the kits include just piles of these screws. So those are handy. You'll just like want a collection of them to have over time. In terms of chest harnesses, I use one for cycling all the time and skiing as well. I primarily have used the GoPro stock one. I find that's really, really good, really trustworthy. I've also started just recently using this one from Stuntman that my friend Desfit, a YouTuber, recommended and I bought. And it's a little bit beefier, so I was using it to shoot 2 GoPros at a time. And also allows me to mount it a little bit higher on my chest, so that I'm liking this one. It's a little more expensive, it's like 30 bucks versus most of the other ones are a lot cheaper than that. Last one, battery charging door. If you're doing long time-lapse type stuff, anything you want to keep the GoPro plugged in the entire time, there's this battery charging door. So basically the way this works is you go and pop your door off the side here. So hope you can see this. Yep. Pop the door off, put this door in here. Now it's not waterproof, it's got a hole in it, right? You can see the hole very clearly, but it allows you to keep it mostly like rainproof. And then the GoPro cable goes in. This one's from GoPro. They just released this back this past a few months ago. I used to get ones from Lonzi and another company for like 10 bucks or so. GoPro's is roughly the same price, and it includes a much better kind of door blocking thing there for the cable. So I would go with this at this point, just because it's a little bit tidier for, I think it's like $1 or $2 more. Similarly, on the cabling side, if you're going to do wired downloads from the Hero 10, you use USB camera adapter from Apple. This one here, I'll link it down below. Not other ones, they won't work. Only the Apple one works. This was like 12 or 15 bucks last night on Amazon, and then today it was like 21. Seems to be all over the place. If you're on Android, Then you need a USB-C to USB-C cable, and this allows you to simply plug your GoPro straight into your phone and download far faster than Wi-Fi and not have to deal with Wi-Fi. It's probably my favorite feature of the GoPro Hero 10. I talked about it in my full review video up there as well, but that is the two things you need to make that work. At this point, we are out of things on the table to talk about. Hopefully you found this interesting or useful. If so, whack that like button at the bottom there. If you got questions, drop in the comment section. I'll try to answer them as best as possible. With that, have a good one.